NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever, so if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhigelan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! Back in the can for another edition of the Lunatic Fringe podcast and another friendly face on the line. Straight to it. Who the fuck are you and what do you do?
Hey, I'm Richö Butts, skydiver, pilot, figuring out how to be a race car driver right now. Sort of keeping busy, doing really anything that lets you go fast near the ground.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like you're giving yourself a decent amount of free time with all that.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of years have definitely been hectic ones. My girlfriend and I have a shared calendar that is really quite a thing to behold. But yeah, I'm doing my best to squeeze it all in.
Dude, COVID must have driven you fucking nuts.
Yeah, so actually, I was very lucky there. I hadn't been working full time, and I was just on the cusp of running out of money. So I went and found a full-time job into COVID, which it turned out was great. Like if I wasn't going outside and doing fun things, might as well be making money. And I also bought my first airplane ride into COVID because I realized that I was probably going to need a hobby that I could do on my own, socially distant, and so that was my chance to really push myself into aerobatics. So I was very fortunate to sort of have those two things going for me. But yeah, that was a tough time.
Dude, that's awesome that you got into aerobatics, though. That is the one thing in flying that I always wanted to at least get a nibble of and never did. Because when I started flying, even to get your commercial license, we weren't required to do spin training, which is regrettable because of course, I end up being an ATP pilot going, all right, conceptually, I know how to get out of a spin, but so being able to get into the aerobatic training is so appealing.
Yeah, I mean, I massively recommend it. If we're ever hanging out in the same place, I'd be very happy to take you for a ride.
Awesome.
Um, you know, I struggle a little bit because there are so many boomer pilots that are like, man, like in my day we had to tear the wings off before you could get your private, and it's like not a very interesting take. The flip side is that I do think that like the sort of upset recovery training that is increasingly kind of like has a syllabus. Like the FAA doesn't really does like to get your CFI. I think you just have to do 3 spins with someone else in the airplane. Like it's not very involved.
Right.
But I think if you can get out and do like spin training, even just do some gentleman's aerobatics, and you don't have to go ape shit, but I think like doing something, man, it just takes the fear out of it. Like I've flown with pilots that are like terrified of stolen the airplane. And like
Sure.
there are times when it's a bad idea, right? Like base to final, not the ideal place to like put your spin recovery training to the test. But like stalls aren't scary. Like spins aren't scary if you're in an airplane that is appropriate for them and you know have the altitude. I again I'm very lucky to do quite a lot of aerobatics. And I literally have a list of things that I just make sure I go out and do once a month because I want to keep, like for example, with like spin recoveries, I want that muscle memory really fresh because when I do enter surprise spin, I don't want to be like, remember, like, is that heavy pedal? Like I'm inverted, so everything's bad. Like I don't want to be
Right.
doing that. And so I just get out and do a bunch of tumbles and, like the best way to enter a spin that you don't know what kind of spin it is to be bad at tumbles. Right. And so like, I just get out and throw the airplane around a little bit and do a bunch of recoveries. It's great. I can't recommend it enough. You should treat yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I was lucky in that 90% of my flight experience is flying jumpers. Most of it is single pilot, most of it is at stall speeds or at, max performance. So I'm used to pushing it in that way. And I mean, I've had a Pac 750 with the full load of 15 in the door and hanging on the tail where I've got the stick all the way to the wall and the power coming up screaming go go go.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so you get really comfortable in places where most pilots would just be shitting their pants. And some maybe slightly more aggressive descents than a normal pilot would be used to. So I think I'd be comfortable in aerobatic situations, but I've just never been there. I mean, I've been close professionally for a long time, but there's a big difference between being close to a spin and being in a spin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think some of it is sort of that intention part where like for sure, like I think I really don't subscribe to the notion that like some flying is better than other flying. Like I got my private in a tail wheel and like tail wheel pilots on Facebook are insufferable. They're the worst. And I think if you look at all the really cool airplanes, very few of them have a little wheel at the back, right? Like
Right.
if you want to fly jets, it's going to be a nose wheel. If you want to do military stuff, it's going to be like it turns out it is aerobatics. That's the only
Pretty
thing that
much.
you need tail wheel for, maybe crop dusting, right? And so like I don't really subscribe to the idea that some flying is better than others. But on the other hand, like yeah, I mean for sure, like flying jumpers, like all anyone cares about is efficiency, right? And you can only do that by like hugging the ragged edge. But you really don't want to exceed it, right? Whereas when
Exactly.
you are in that aerobatic environment, especially in a very capable airplane, it's fun to exceed the limit. I mean, you should respect like V&E and stuff, but like as far as like, well, what if I pull too hard and have an accelerated stall on an upline? It's like, I don't know, see what happens,
Right.
which is not a great attitude to have in like a more commercial environment.
Well, it's funny too, because right, that's just experience that starts talking as well. Because I've knock on wood, definitely pushed personal limits and made mistakes in potentially critical phases of flight. Is a pretty diplomatic way to put it. And you get away with it, but it scares the shit out of you. And there's nothing better than almost fucking up and knowing that you did that to snap you out of doing some stupid shit.
Yeah, 100%. It's actually kind of an interesting one. I had a good conversation with someone at a rally the other day about like the term adrenaline junkie, right?
Mm.
And like I think it gets thrown around so much, and obviously with my hobbies, I hear that one a lot. And I was trying to explain that like that I don't think that's the point. The point isn't to, just like be full of adrenaline. On the other hand, like there is no more intense feeling than like very nearly dying, right? Like having that moment of like, oh shit, I should not do that again.
Yeah.
I don't. I think if you seek that feeling out, like your name's going to go on a list. Uh, but on the other hand, like if you do enough rad shit, like it will happen sooner or later, and you kind of have to like embrace both the feeling and the lesson, and lean into that. Like that was rad. Let's fucking never ever do that again, right?
Right. That's the big thing, right? I mean, I've had more than my share of very entertaining flybys. Some of them really fucking dirty flybys that you'll look back, and the rare ones that actually have video, and you're like, oh, this should probably never be seen by anybody until I'm way too old to be held accountable for it. But those are the ones too that I've never after the fact had more fear in regard to something that I successfully did than while flying. Skydiving never came close. I never did anything while jumping that I look back and went, I can't believe I got away with that. But in a plane, it happened enough that I checked shit off a list and went, never need to do that again. Never need to do that again, and it's humbling and it's scary in retrospect.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the thing that often gets me is not even sort of the event, if you will, but a lot of times it's like, how did I get there, right? Like, what was going through my head when I thought that this would end well? And
Yeah.
like, I think I have had some of those moments in skydiving. I sort of had one last year. I do some test jumping, and a jump obviously went fine, but I did learn some really valuable lessons on that skydive, and for sure, like some of them in retrospect were very obvious, right? And so I did have that moment, like while I was gathering my thoughts, of just being like, how did I not see this? Like this very nearly went awful and like was extremely preventable. And I mean, like to some, I mean, that's why people do test jumps, right? Is to figure it out. But I feel like the same thing happens in aviation. The trick with airplanes is like they take a long time to recover, right? Like I think skydivers don't appreciate how uh, how little time, energy, and altitude it takes to recover from your mistakes. Like in a wingsuit, if you're hauling ass, like you can flare hundreds of feet in the air at any moment, right?
Yeah.
If you pull your reserve handle at 500 feet, I mean, it's like 50-50, but 500 feet is not a lot, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in an airplane, like you can be at 2,000 feet and absolutely fucked,
Yeah.
right? And that's actually one of the things that was really difficult for me transitioning to aerobatics is because like skydiving like below 3 grand, like you should not be in free fall, which,
Right.
I mean, belly dogs will quibble about that, but like for sure, for me, like I want to be under a main by like 3.5 because
Yeah.
my mains are real fast. And the bottom of the box for primary, which is the most beginner category of aerobatics, is 1,500 feet, and like everything's big down there.
Yeah.
Everything's super big. And then like this year, actually last year, sorry, I moved up to intermediate, which only moves it down 300 feet. It's only down to 1,200 feet, and like the biggest 300 feet I've ever flown through is
I
everything
bet.
between 1,500 and 1,200.
I bet. I've got a good buddy, a pilot by the name of Chris Kleinheinz that was actually, when he and I were flying and jumping in the same place, he was flying for Emirates Airlines and then moved over for one of the freight carriers back in the States and got himself into aerobatic flying because, like me, he didn't really have any experience in that. He went straight into the type of flying he was going to do. And other than, sim training, there's just not really much of an opportunity. But he decided he really wanted to, got himself a share in a pits, learned in the pits, and then sold his share in the pits, and now he's in an extra. And he sends me the videos of his training, and I'll watch because it'll be videos of him, up at 3 or 4 thousand feet doing whatever it is that he's doing. Those videos don't make me nervous. The ones that make me nervous are guys like Kirby Chambliss that are on his fucking head with the tail maybe a meter off the ground, popping smoke and going next to some guy on a motorcycle. And that's where I'm like, but you sneeze and that's it.
Yeah, and I mean it's actually funny you say that. Like one of my goals for the next couple of years is to finish well, I mean kind of start, but like get my SAC card because I would like to fly air shows.
Mm.
And it's interesting coming from sort of a RESTI, which is the catalog system for competition aerobatic flying. I'm okay at RESTI flying, like I'm not the best, but I can hold my own. And with that background now, when I watch airshow flying, the little things that they're doing to give themselves margin really start to stick out, right? Like if you think about what a half Cuban should look like, so it's 5/8 of a loop, roll back to upright, and then the last eighth of a loop to roll out. You know, like in competition, the 5/8 loop is meant to be perfectly round. The radiuses are all meant to be the same. The half roll is meant to be halfway down the line. You know, there's a whole judging criteria for how you score a 10 for the figure. But then you see someone sort of do that maneuver without the half roll so that they're rolling out inverted at the ground. And like the loop is super egg shaped in order to mean that they're pulling the least G as they get near the ground and they're pursuing the most altitude. And so like there are things that go into it, but you can say all of that stuff, and at the end of the day, you're still like threatening to rub your rudder on a runway, right?
Yeah.
And it is bananas, right? And it only takes that half second of forgetting that like you're upside down and everything's backwards. You know, like you
Sure.
just have to back off the stick pressure for a second, and like you're having a bad day. So those guys are nuts. There's a sorry.
I was going to say, it sounds to me like you're part seat of your pants and also very technical at the same time. At least that's the way it seems as well. So where did the extreme stuff come into your life? Because I mean, you also huck yourself out of airplanes and clearly have an affinity for doing stupid shit.
Yeah, I don't actually know exactly where it came from because I feel like I was a pretty sedate child. I think I was pretty risk averse as a kid, honestly. And so the joke I've made before is that puberty must have hit me like a truck, right? Like I think I think something snapped around about that time while my hormones were trying to balance themselves out. Because I started like I rode dirt bikes a little bit as a kid, but even then, like I sort of was that person who was like, ooh, like I don't want to jump it too big, like whatever. And then so around about my early 20s, I got a motorcycle, started doing track days, that escalated into racing. And so like I think that was my first real taste of like, oh, like I enjoy this pushing thing, you know, like I'm interested in like seeing how fast I can go, like being in direct competition, which I think is the most I think that the thread that runs through all of these pursuits for me is competition, right? Like I want to compare myself to other people. I want to know how well I'm doing, and you know, ideally I would like to win, right? So then I took a big break from motorsports after I had a pretty big crash in Australia, came to the US, and some of my coworkers were like, hey, we're going to go do a tandem on Saturday. And as someone who's been chronically scared of heights, like even just thinking about it makes me a little bit sweaty.
Right.
I was like, sure, that's a fun thing to say. You know, I'll say yes to this. What could possibly go wrong? So we went out to the drop zone. I threw up like 3 times that day before we even got on the airplane. Like I was not doing very well. Finally got on the airplane, did the tandem. And I remember this so vividly because I got out and instantly I knew for a fact that my only hope of surviving this experience was to get back in the airplane. So I'm looking up and I'm watching this King Air get very small. Like it turns out the airplane takes off. And so for a good 5 seconds, like the gears were just grinding while I'm trying to figure out what I have to do to get back in. And it became clear early on that wasn't really going to work out for me. And so at that point I was like, well, obviously I'm about to die, so I might as well just enjoy it. So I hung out in free fall, you know, parachute opened. I think I had Mad John take me for my first tandem, which was a fun connection to the sport because I sort of didn't realize what a thing he was at the time. We did some spins on the canopy and I wound up having to be like, hey, like, what if we chill out? Because I do not feel incredible. Landed, and honestly, I mean, it wasn't like a visceral, like, this is going to be my life now, but I kind of landed and I was like, yeah, I would do that again. And so I signed up for AFF, and even that was like a struggle. Like I bashed out AFF in 2 weekends because I was kind of aware that I sort of needed to stick at it. And I would be driving to the drop zone like super anxious, like sweaty in a rental car, not coping well. And I basically resigned myself to like, I'm going to get my A license and then I'm going to quit. Like, I'm just like, this sucks. I hate it. I'm not a quitter though. Like I'm gonna see this through. I'm gonna get a stamp on my forehead, and then I'm gonna be done with this forever. Um, but sort of around about sort of jumps 22, 23, I started to warm up to the whole thing a little bit, and then once I started doing skydives with other people, I think I just didn't have time to be concerned because
Sure.
instead of sitting in the door like trying desperately to count to 10 over the course of 10 seconds and not what because when you're stressed, and so once I had to focus on like not kooking the exit, like what am I gonna, I think I started to really enjoy it. And then, the rest is history because I went on
Sure.
to do
You know,
quite a lot of skydives.
it's funny because you and I have pretty similar stories in regard to the beginnings of it. Because if I look back with a critical eye on my beginnings in the sport, although I was good at it and it came pretty naturally and quickly to me, if I look back, what I remember most is being proud of the accomplishment, but on a daily, hating it. It was
Hmm.
terrifying. I fucking hated it, man. I had a place on the highway I could turn around with no shame, but if I kept going, I had to go make at least one jump. I mean, literally to the point where I'd be driving to the drop zone going, all right, I can't die today because I got to see my kid graduate high school. Shit like that going through your head. And they'd call you an adrenaline junkie, and you're like, no, the adrenaline side of thing is fucking terrifying. I can't function if I'm pumped out of my mind. You can't do it. It's not that, that's always the after effect. I always freak out on the ground, but in the air, I'm calm.
Yeah, and I mean, say hard same. Like I would at the end of the day, I'd be like, man, that was a great day. I'm
Yep.
really glad I did this, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I would be driving to the drop zone just like, why? Why? And like on at the point where I'd be looking at the steering wheel, being like, why aren't you turning around? Like there's not even a good like why are we doing this? Pull
Yep.
into the parking lot and just sit in the car for 10 minutes. Like,
And it's it's
so-
very difficult to explain it to other people when you can barely understand it yourself, because I struggled with understanding why it was I wanted to continue doing it. And part of it was just because I was fucking stubborn and I don't like something beating me. I don't like quitting. I don't like giving up. Unless it's just okay, yeah, now I'm done. But that's not quitting. That's just finishing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I do think that was a part of it for me. I mean, like I said, like I wasn't gonna quit. I was gonna get my A license, then quit, which somehow I had drawn a line in my head that made that somehow better. But yeah, like same deal, honestly. And I find this in a lot of my pursuits, like base jumping, I've had exactly the same thing where I'm sitting at an exit point. I'm like, why is this important again? And then, I jump and I'm like, oh yeah, it feels great. Way into it.
Yep.
Like now I'm pursuing this rally thing, and once we're moving, like it is incredible. It's one of the best feelings in the world. But like a morning of, I'll be like, fuck, this is pretty stupid. Like we're gonna go and do 100 miles an hour on a gravel road. That doesn't make a ton of sense.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the time it's not like an adrenaline thing, but it is about like pushing a limit, right? And
Sure.
and exploring the space and trying to see what you're capable of.
I mean, the adrenaline for me always came after the fact, I mean, on the more intense flybys, or when you're about to do something that might not be the best idea, I'm focused, I'm calming myself. Maybe I'm wiping my hands, but I'm actively calming myself down. I'm trying to evacuate whatever adrenaline might cloud my judgment while I race towards something really ridiculous. And then after it's done, it's wow, that was really cool. Holy shit, that was stupid. I never need to do that again.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's funny. Like we talked a little bit before about like the some of the reflexes that you build, like that moment of I feel this tumble getting away from me. It is like a bizarrely exciting experience.
Sure.
I will say like I fly two airplanes right now. I fly a super decathlon and an extra, and the decathlon is a little bit stressful just because you can break it, right? Like
Sure.
that airplane has limits that are less than the limits of my body. Like the extra is placarded plus -10, which is a lot. Like it's more than most people are ever going to use. And like I know they're tested to 20 at the factory, right? And
Wow.
like it turns out like at the point where you've put -20 Gs on your body, it doesn't matter whether or not the wings are intact because you aren't,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
the state of it really just matters where the airplane is going to end up at that point because
Right.
it doesn't matter for you anymore. And so it is like a bizarrely like liberating feeling to fly an airplane that functionally has no limits. There are a couple of specific things Whereas in the decathlon, like I do find that making sure I'm within the airplane's limitations is a little bit more of a like I think that helps keep it in check a little bit more, and I have less of a let's just find out
Sure.
to
I
when I
mean,
fly
because,
it.
well, you know that you have markers that you have to keep an eye on. I have to look at my speed. I have to look at this or that. But in something like an extra, where you're going to break long before that aircraft does, I would imagine that's dangerously freeing at times.
Yeah, I mean it's fun. I mean the other thing that's nice about the extra is like the main limit that you could bump into is V&E, right? Like you can't exceed red line or you really shouldn't. Um, but because the wing is so strong, like once you put about 6G on the wing, it will just start to slow down. Like the airplane just can't sustain its energy.
Sure.
And so like it turns out if you're going too fast, all you have to do is pull really hard. Problem solved, right? Which is not realistic in the decathlon. Like the wing is a lot thinner. It also has a limit of +6. So like you know that strategy has problems. And so like there are times when like you can if you commit to a poorly thought out split S, like you have choices to make.
Sure.
Which is like not really the case in the extra. So like in the extra, like really as long as you have altitude and fuel, you
Sure.
know, you can probably make anything work, which
Sure.
is delightful. Big fan.
Now for the non-pilots, what is VNE and what is VNE in
Oh
an
yeah,
extra?
yeah. So V&E is velocity never exceed, and it is basically the speed at which the airplane. There's kind of two definitions. In theory, for most airplanes at V&E, the wing will stall before anything breaks, which basically means you can heave on the stick as hard as you want, quote unquote, safely, because you'll experience an accelerated stall before the airframe comes apart. In aerobatic types, I think the certification process is similar, but all of a sudden, just like tearing the tail feathers off starts to become more of
Sure.
a realistic concern because they're built stronger. In the extra, it's 220 knots, which is real fast. Might only be 200.
That's still plenty
I
fast.
it's super quick. And there's sort of an aerobatic joke or not, depending on who you are, that V&E is a limit, not a goal. Is a goal, not a limit. Sorry. And like I know of international competitors who are like snapping at V&E, which is rough on your body and on the airplane. But for someone who's flying intermediate, optimistic about moving up to advanced, it is tons and tons of energy.
Sure.
And so like I definitely got more comfortable flying at up towards V&E once I got into aerobatics. Like when I got my private, like flying in the yellow, which is VA, which is maneuvering speed, is like something I feel like they don't talk about it too much in private training. It's like you could, but should you? And like
Right.
a lot of times the airplane can't get there straight and level even with full power, and so it's like not really material. And it wasn't until I started flying aerobatics that it really is a little bit more like, oh yeah, that red line, you should kiss it. Like what if you entered the figure, like, I mean, don't exceed it, but like, yeah, don't be under it by too much. And
Sure.
so it's just a very different mindset.
Well, and it's also, I mean, it's knowing your craft as well. I mean, for most aircraft, the manufacturers are testing to a pretty substantial stupid pilot factor. Um,
Yeah.
And I would imagine with something like an extra, dramatically more than your average stupid pilot. So you've got that buffer, but that's also a double-edged sword as well, because when you've been flying for a long time, you know that there's that stupid pilot factor in there, and there's that fucking mole of a voice in the back of your head that's like, you can get away with it. There's a little bit more in there, and
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because that comes up across a lot of my pursuits, right? Is like how much margin is there? And in fact, like the joke I've made over the years is like nearly every sport I'm involved in is basically the you're seeking the answer to a fundamental question, and it's how much can I ask, right? Like in swooping, how much can I ask of the wing? In aerobatics, it's absolutely how much can I ask of the wing, and also like how much can I ask of the judges.
yeah,
And now, like pursuing this rally thing, it's ultimately how much can I ask of the tires, right? And ultimately, it's a lot. It's almost the same calculus across all of them. And so with that margin piece, my take on it really has been that I try to color inside the lines as much as I can, because that way I'm sort of preserving all of that buffer, right?
Sure.
And like design load is 50% more than or maximum load is 50% more than design load, and so you know that you have that cushion
Right.
in any certified airplane. But if you can be reasonably disciplined about not eating into it, now you actually have all that margin. You know, I feel like it's easy to be like, well, like I know there's 50%, so you start using it, and now when you actually need real margin because your plans haven't gone well, like now you are really exploring the space.
Sure. Well, and
Um,
I was very lucky too in that I was pretty solid about always making sure that I stayed at the margins or below because I was flying jumpers, most of my career. 14,000 hours with people in the back, you have a different level that you have to, be performing at because there's other lives involved. That and not to mention the fact that when you're flying a Twin Otter that was built in 1963, you're not sure how much of that margin is being eaten away just by good old time.
yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
and there have
I
been a
mean, I've
few.
also, oh, sorry.
No. I was just going to say there have been a few times when I've needed that margin because out of either cockiness or complacency, you find yourself where you're not supposed to be, and all those memories come flashing back. Yeah, wings level, slowly pull back, bleed that shit out. Whatever the situation you may have painted yourself into, and you just hope the entire time that that margin's what you hope it is.
Yeah, I mean, I've also like I've humbled myself. I've broken an airplane flying inside the limits more than once, right? Like not long after I got my super decathlon, I was flying in a contest. I mean, it's sort of a long story that I think the minutia is probably not super interesting to everyone, but there's a long-standing thing that if you snap roll super decathlon, sooner or later you'll crack the fuel tanks in the wings. Um, and so I bought this airplane. I never snap rolled it, but I did have bad fuel gauges, and I think I was slowly. I think I was always just putting a little bit more fuel in than I was burning because of the gauges, and so just doing like slow rolls in competition. Eventually, I cracked both of my tanks. I got home from the contest, and there was just a thin blue streak along the trailing edges. Aviation fuel is dyed blue, so that you know what it is. And I saw a blue tint to my paint and was like, ah, yes, I think I see what I've done, right? But that was flying absolutely to the letter of the book, right? Like I didn't break a single rule in the POH, and I still managed to break the airplane.
Sure.
And so I got brand new fuel tanks, got them installed. That was a expensive and time consuming process, but
I
like
bet.
now I can say absolutely that airplane has never been snap rolled with these tanks, which is great. But then like not long after I got the airplane back from that, I was practicing for a contest. I hadn't flown in 9 months or something, or I hadn't flown that airplane in 9 months because it was down getting maintenance work. And so I was really trying to play catch up for a competition that I was going to fly in. And so I was coming through the bottom of a split S. I was pulling basically the maximum G. The needle was right at 6. Airspeed was very, very close to V&E because I was pushing because I was getting ready for competition. And there was the loudest fucking bang I've ever heard in my life. And it's one of those things where you're saying like, well, it's like wings level and try to bleed the energy, but the state of commitment I was in was like there's nothing more. Like the whole point was that I was going to roll out of this thing like at V&E, probably close to the bottom of the box. So I did my best to juggle it, and that was my first like quote unquote emergency. Like I didn't know what was happening. I think my priorities were pretty straight in that the first thing I did was slow down, gain some altitude, and try and see whether or not the airplane wants to fly. So I just like climbed as best I could, reasonably slow. Played with all the controls, like airplane wanted to fly. I figured I'd put the battery through the floor, honestly. Like that was, I don't know why that's where my head went, but I sort of was like, that would explain, because there was a loud bang and then it got windy, right? And so I was like, there's a hole somewhere, right? Like air is leaving and it's sucking more in. So like, all right. So I got to over my home airport, which luckily is quite close to my practice area, at like 6,000 feet. Because I was, if nothing else, I was like, I'm wearing a parachute. Like if this thing really takes off, like I'll find
You're
an
good.
open field and the insurance company can deal with it, right? So I got over the airport and then I did a stall up there to get a feel for whether or not I was going to be able to land it. And like it felt fine, and I was like, cool, whatever. So came home, landed, taxied up to my hangar, and like I hopped out already craning my head to look under the airplane because I knew I was going to see a perfect battery shaped hole in the like at that point I was supremely confident that was the issue. So I looked out and like the belly was fine. I was like, oh, interesting. Like, was it all in my head? And then I looked at the roof and I'd torn a ton of fabric off the top.
Oh,
Yeah, which was very exciting. And luckily, like, a local mechanic was able to fix it for me, and it wound up not being a huge deal. But it was one of those things where, like, that let go at basically the worst imaginable time, right?
sure.
Like, I was not low, but I was at the bottom of the box. I was hauling ass, and I already had like the maximum G that the airframe is certified for. So, like,
Right.
the traditional recovery of, like, add some G and slow down is like, well, I was already doing that, right? And so, like, in a split second, I had to make the call. And, like, well, is it better to over G the airframe to try and arrest this descent, right? Because it was like a shitty situation to try and figure out getting out if that was where
Right.
it went. And I think, like, having given that more thought beforehand would have gone a lot better for me. And
Sure.
it's kind of like one of those situations where I did land and be like, fuck me, like, that was exciting. And I texted my girlfriend to be like, hey, like, something exciting just happened, which was super dumb. Like, it wasn't. Sometimes I text Tam because I know she could know. Like, in the rally environment, there's this thing called Rally Safe that shows the state of all competitors. And so if someone red crosses a stage, which means something bad happened,
Right.
as soon as we get cell service, I text her because I know she can see that,
Sure.
right? But, like, she had no way of knowing that I had a. There was nothing stopping me from getting home and
Yeah.
just giving her a hug and being like, "Hey, you want to hear a fun story about a bad choice I made?"
Yeah.
But straight away I texted her and be like, "Hey, like, had kind of an exciting one in the practice area. Like, here's a picture of my broken ass airplane."
Sure.
But like, all I had to do was think a little more carefully about that, and it would have been less eventful at least.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's just one of those things though that you put in your hard knocks. I mean, the first, I don't even recall the first emergency that I dealt with, but as with most, it sets your pulse racing and you're, holy shit, this is real. Something might go wrong, whether it be in flying or skydiving, but this particularly in flying. And then by the end of it, a lot like a buddy of mine that used to fly in Cross Keys, and I'll never forget this. He was a young kid with a shit ton of hours, and he was flying the Caravan. We were flying back from Sussex to Cross Keys, and he said the strangest thing ever. So I'm sitting in the right seat, and he's like, I really want something to go wrong. Like, this is fucking boring. Nothing ever goes wrong. This just works. I want to know what it's like to, like, ditch in a field. And I didn't get it until many, many years and like 4 Otter engine failures later. And everything for like a year had been going smooth. And I'm like, can just something fucking blow up? Cause this is boring, And I went, oh fuck, I've officially crossed over to the dark side.
Yeah, I mean, I do sympathize with that, and I think it's interesting. Like, for me, skydiving was my first, like, things can really go wrong in a way, in a fixable way, kind of sport. Like, motor racing, especially circuit racing on motorcycles, I mean, things can go wrong, but by and large, you just crash instantly, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's not a ton of decision tree, right? Like,
Right.
it's stay on or get off, and sometimes physics makes that choice for you.
Yeah.
Where skydiving is the first time I really had that, like, you may have to, like, solve a problem. But skydiving is also so deceptively simple because, like, it turns out 99 times out of 100, it's pull one handle and then pull the other handle, right?
Yep.
And, like, that will fix the vast majority of problems. And,
Yep.
like, there's exceptions, but we've done a good job of making pull two handles in the correct order will probably put you right.
Well,
Um,
that was the odd thing trying to explain that to my family when I switched from full-time skydiving to full-time flying, trying to get across the fact that it was much more dangerous to stay in the airplane than it was to jump out of it. Because at the end of the day, so much more can go wrong with a fucking airplane than with parachute. And if something goes wrong with a parachute, it's oddly enough a very slow, easy to work through process.
yeah, when I started flying, like, probably I think somewhere between my private and getting started in aerobatics, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos this guy Elliot Seguin made. He's a test pilot, does some Reno stuff. He's awesome. You should check him out. But when I first watched his videos, I was like, man, this guy is so risk averse. Like, he's just send it. It was like frustrating to me because I was like, that airplane is so cool. Like, why? Like, you should go. That airplane is fast. You should go fast in it. And then I got more experience and I went back and watched some of those videos and I was like, no, this is a very reasonable strategy. Like, because it is like, and like, a classic example is he was flying an airplane and it had an issue with the gear and also an issue with the engine, right? And so he was like, well, do I have a little bit of a crash right now and just be done, right? Like the airplane's going to be totaled, but I'll be on the ground and I'll have done it on an airport on a runway that has a fire truck. Or do I push the power forward, go around, maybe fix the gear, maybe land downtown it was like a midget Mustang or something. It was like not a good airplane for trying to land on,
Oh,
in a crowded intersection. And skydiving doesn't have that.
no.
There is no time in skydiving that you have to make the choice between more time and less time, right?
Right.
Like time is, you are always getting closer to the ground. Go back up is not viable.
Yep.
And it's such an interesting mindset change for me coming from that, like, kind of just where do I want to end up and which parachute do I want to be flying? It's such a simple tree to
Sure.
have, like for example, like, when I blew the roof off the decathlon, like there was a different runway right there. Could absolutely have gone there, but then I was like, well, I'm going to be stuck in the middle of nowhere. I literally, it's probably a 20-minute walk to a road, right? Like even getting home, ignoring the state of the airplane and how I'm going to get it fixed. And in pretty much straight away, I was like, no, like it doesn't. It'll still fly hands off. Like I let go of the stick. I was like, cool, like airplane still flies. I don't see any reason I shouldn't take it home. But it's so drastically different. And then you were talking about like in a twin. Now it's even again like engine failure isn't even depending on the twin. I have a tiny bit of multi-time, but and the only twin I've flown can actually go. You can climb on one engine.
Sure.
Like a lot of them, it's like you just get to descend slowly, which is great. But like that decision of like, well, do I push on? Do I turn around? Do I go back? Is this a convenient place to get stuck? Which like you probably shouldn't be thinking about a lot of the times, but you are
Sure.
obviously, right?
Sure.
Like if the airplane's going to get grounded, it's probably better if you can do that somewhere a mechanic can get to.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about these things just because I think to go full circle, like all of this shit is just risk management, which actually
Sure.
is my job. Like I do cybersecurity, which is also just risk assessment
Sure.
ultimately. It just turns out that base jumping, the stakes are a lot higher and a lot more personal.
Sure.
Than like someone has a bad day on the stock market versus I have a really bad one. But yeah, like I think all of that, it just boils down to that. And this is something I bang on about constantly when I'm coaching. It is like it is so much easier to change your plan than make one. So even if you've like, you don't have to have you don't have to have drawn the flowchart on the window in Sharpie, but you should have kind of thought about it, right?
Yeah.
Where is a big runway?
Sure.
Like in skydiving, like is my RSL hooked up and should it be? Like
Sure.
that. This is like a hill that I could totally die on. So many people, oh, I'm too cool for an RSL, dude. No, like
Yeah.
RSLs are good. Mods are great. Like if you have a mod, like the cases where you shouldn't have it hooked up, in my opinion, are vanishingly slim. Like
Sure.
they exist, but like 99% of skydivers, like no, dude. Like
Sure. Well,
blind twist on your. Oh, sorry.
it really is funny the separation between the flying aspect of our sport and the jumping aspect of the sport, and for me the separation is the very simplicity of skydiving for the most part, and then the opposite of that with flying, and then my flying boils down to only single engine time and multi time. And I remember being in the sim training with the Twin Otter and doing V1 cuts and having trained and knowing this is where you're gonna kill the power and stop on the runway, and this is when no matter how loud the bang, you have to take it in the air. And that was a real turning point in aviation. You're like, oh, every fiber in my being is screaming fucking stop right here, and that's the one thing you can't do.
Yeah, and actually, so that's a really interesting thing. Because like I said, I do a lot of like risk assessment stuff as my day job, and so when I sort of learned that V1 exists, I got fascinated by the concept. I went really long on it, and I think the thing that's most fascinating about it to me is it's straight up just a numbers game, right? Like you're not actually guaranteed a good outcome, but people have done the math, right, and figured out that like statistically it's better.
Yep.
And the reason I bring this up, there was a early Concorde crash. They sucked some metal from like a 737 into one of the engines. The
Hmm.
engine let go. And it was past V1 and they took off, and ultimately it was a terrible catastrophe and everyone died. It was a shitty accident. But I think it's easy to look at that, and on balance, I think if that captain had aborted, that situation probably would have gone better. Like, I mean, if nothing else, like it couldn't possibly have gone worse, right? Because like
Sure.
a Concorde smashed into downtown wherever it was. Um, and like I think it's easy. I think skydivers are so prone to this. They're just, it's so easy for skydivers to believe that they're built different, right? And the mod thing is like the perfect distillation of this attitude, where it's like it doesn't matter how many times you show people videos of of like someone spinning up, test jumps, whatever, spun main, they rigged up a tension knot on it, it's blown a toggle, the thing has a million line twists, they're doing 900 RPM, and then you get a good mod extraction. Skydivers find it so easy to see the one video of someone who did get line twists on their reserve and be like, well, that's,
Yeah.
I'm going to get stable. Yeah. Right. Like that. I won't do that. Even though like the numbers are overwhelmingly in favor of the fact that that was statistically unlikely, and B, turns out actually having line twists on your reserve and another 1,000 feet to deal with them, probably the better outcome. And like aviation is so disciplined about this, and I mean it helps that like Part 121 is like the whole thing is built on rigor and discipline. Like
Sure.
That's just what 121 flying is. But it's so drilled in, and like skydiving is I feel like there's no pushback on that attitude. And like that, like you said, I try to be that pushback when I'm coaching. And when I see someone who, is flying like a big ass layer or something, like a 99 layer with no mod, and I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, well, if my main spins up, I'm gonna get stable. And I'm like, but will you though? Because like I've seen the last 100 people with that attitude, and like it didn't go great for many of them.
Yep.
And so it's interesting to hear, especially I wouldn't have picked an otter as like being an airplane that you would think about V1 in. I have no otter time, so like
Sure.
it makes sense that I don't know a lot about them. But like I kind of think of that as being an airplane that you probably would just abort. And I'm sure it varies. Like it also depends who you're flying it for.
Sure.
But yeah, it's super fascinating.
Absolutely. No, and it was fascinating for me too. I mean, my route into the Twin Otter was as fucking jump pilot as it gets. I went from flying a PAC 750, got hired to fly the Otter in Chicago before I had my multi-engine, had to get my multi-engine to get the job. And within, I want to say 20 hours of flying the Otter was on my own with very basic jump pilot training and emergency procedures. I mean, basic shit. And it was 4 years later that I ended up with Seaborne Airlines that also flew the Twin Otters and was sent to flight safety in the sim. And I vividly remember sending my old boss a message after the first day of sim training going, I don't know how I didn't kill everybody. We all should have been fucking dead. Do you know all the different shit this plane does? Like, just lost my mind. And it was so funny because it was so dramatically different. And then in doing all the training to eventually get my ATP, of course, you see an entirely different world of flying that is so opposite to being basically a barnstormer as a jump pilot. I mean, it's all stick and rudder, seat of your pants shit.
Yeah, I mean it's fun. Like I think especially recently, I don't know whether this has changed or it's just I'm more exposed to it, but the pipeline of like tandem instructor to pilot has been very busy lately, right? Like
yes.
I can count a ton of my buddies who've basically woken up one morning and been like, fuck all this, like my lower back can't take it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go become a pilot, which is awesome. Like you should do it. But it's fun for me because like we get to hang out, and like I took a similar I actually started flying because I had a knee surgery and I couldn't jump for a while, so I took some flying lessons just because I wanted to be up in the air, which was a big change from I'm shit scared all the time, right? So like maybe I'll just go up for the fun of it. But because I took that hard right turn into aerobatics, like now when I hang out with these people, and we both have very structured flying experiences, right? Like I fly very, very precisely when I'm either competing or training. But obviously I'm flying very precisely, like upside down.
Sure.
And they're flying extremely precisely because, there's a check captain.
Sure.
And when we compare notes, it is interesting to see the different ways that we are rigorous about preserving that margin.
Sure.
Because for me, like, and also I guess that probably the more fun version of this is also like where we get our giggles. Like my favorite my favorite words to hear are like early right crosswind approved expedite climb when I used to fly out of Concord, which basically meant buzz the tower.
Right.
Like that was basically their version of it. And so, you know, you're climbing out at like 3,000 feet a minute. You can't really see anything in the extra, but you know, I'm sort of just taking the word for it that the pattern's empty. But you know, you get from, you know, runway to 2,000 feet in less than a minute. It's awesome. It is so fun. And like defensively, that's like the safest thing you can do, right?
Sure.
Which if anyone ever asks me why I was doing that, it's because it's important to get far from the ground, and not because it's fun. But you know, like a lot of times, you know, they'll hear, you know, like they'll get a similar version of that, which you know, and it's basically is like your license to haul ass for a little bit.
Yeah.
It's super interesting for me to compare notes on like how we have very similar experiences in like wildly different airplanes.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, in it's my favorite thing specifically with flying the Twin Otter after all the years that I had flown is every once in a while you would get a pilot that would come out to do a ride along. And every once in a while that pilot would be an airline pilot who is used to a dramatically different kind of flying. And no matter how much I would brief them on the descent, and look, this my whole being, my whole reason for existence is to beat most of the tandems to the ground to get the next load to go back up, but they could never wrap their head around that. And I used to love having to tell these 10, 15,000 hour jet jocks, don't grab the fucking controls. Like I know
You'll
exactly.
actually,
And I loved it.
I've flown right seat in an Otter a handful of times, especially when I broke my back. I had little else to do, so I sort of went for rides whenever I could. And I've done a handful of landings, and I vividly remember my first one, right? Because I'm in the Otter, and like the descent was pretty like that didn't bother me, right? Like
Sure.
I'm used to it being windy and loud in the airplane. Like
Sure.
descending fast doesn't get me. It was a pretty good crosswind day. And so we're coming around, and you know, I've finally got full flaps in, and you've flown it. You're staring at the ground, right? Like
Yeah.
the descent profile with full flaps in is just been, even with a little bit of pattern, it is stupid how steep that thing flies.
Yeah, it's wrong.
And so my buddy in the left seat is like, "You're getting slow," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. Fuck off." Right? Like, but I'm doing a good job of being eyes up, right? Like I'm aware that I'm probably in a little bit over my head, and so I am eyes out, just trying to figure out when the fuck to flare this boat. And he's like, "You're getting slow," and I'm like, "I can't be getting slow. I'm staring at a runway. Like this airplane might as well be going straight down. It is impossible that I'm getting slow." And like whatever, he lets me go, and I start flaring, and like I'm not even that far into it yet, and I just feel the rudder hit the stop, and I'm like, "That's bad. That is going to become a problem real soon." Because I mean, the rudder on an Otter is fucking enormous, right? Like even slow, it is a gigantic control surface. And so I'm sort of aware that if I've run out of it this early in the piece, I must be incredibly slow. And the next thought is like, do you remember people telling me that turbines take a while to spool up? I wonder how long that is. And so I stopped fishing for some throttle. I think I got a little help on that one, and you know, obviously didn't break anything, but it is just so insane coming from, you know, like my style, especially in tailwheel airplanes. I'm studying very gently for my commercial right now, and because of the nature that the flying that I do, you have to do a maneuver called a power off 180, where you chop the power, beam the numbers, and then you have to land on a specified point, basically on the numbers. And it turns out I've read the ACS very, very clearly. It says where you touch down. It doesn't say how fast you're going at the time. And so like a fun thing about tailwheel, because like I don't have flaps, so like managing your speed once you chop the power is sort of more involved than airplanes that have flaps. So my plan is to just haul ass and do, I'm guessing you know what a wheel landing is, but it's basically you plant the mains, and you can do it at like literally any speed because the wings are still flying. And so an examiner might get to see me do a wheel landing at like $180. We'll see how this shakes out, but that's sort of my plan. And so it's so bizarre coming from, you know, that environment where like, I mean, I try not to take the piss too much. It can be a little bit rough on the airplane. It's certainly rough on the brakes, but you know, like whatever, like just show up at whatever airspeed, it'll be fine. To like, no, you should show up at a very specific airspeed, very specific attitude, because it's not as funny to show up, you know, 70 knots fast in a Twin Otter, it turns out.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'll tell you, flying a Twin Otter is like flying a big multi-engine 182 for the most part, until you start tossing in crossed winds and all that stuff. And I mean, I've landed in some pretty ridiculous crosswinds where you're one wheel for half of the runway and it's just full tilt otter till you let the other main down, and you don't let the damn nose wheel touch down until you're almost stopped. And
Mhm.
it's and then because as soon as the nose wheel's down, now you have a fucking tiller to
I
contend
was going to
with.
say, then you got to juggle the tiller as well, which I'm super glad like sitting right seat. I just didn't have to touch that, and
Sure.
that was good for me. It looks
Yeah,
hard.
no, and it's like anything, right? I mean, I'm sure I would be incredibly intimidated by aerobatics in an extra, but you get to your level and now you're comfortable with it. Well, after a certain point, a crosswind in a twin otter doesn't really raise your pulse much, but the poor pilot that's riding along, sitting in the right seat, is shitting his pants. So,
Yeah, I mean, in fact, like, come visit. We'll find out if aerobatics stress you out. There's only one rule when people fly with me, and that's do not puke in the airplane. Like,
that's a good
honestly,
rule.
I don't really care what you do. Just do not puke in the airplane.
Luckily for me, the only time I've ever had air sickness is in both the flight safety and the Viking sim, and that's because the visuals are like a millisecond off of the physical
Mm.
feeling, and it fucks with me. So every time I've gone to the sim, I'll tell them, "Let's get this ground shit that I got to do out of the way right now, and then put me in the clouds for every bit of it. I don't want to see shit." Like,
Nice.
I don't want to see it. I don't want none of that crap because I will throw up in your sim.
I mean, I also like I aggressively try to get whoever I'm giving a ride to do the bulk of the flying, and I find that helps so much with air sickness.
Sure.
Like, especially in the one that I always forget about is telling people how quickly you can stop rolling. Like, people will get a feel for the roll rate, which is like ridiculous compared to every other airplane, and still not that outrageous compared to the pinnacle of aerobatic airplanes, if that makes sense. Like,
Sure.
I fly a
Yeah, yeah.
mid-wing extra, and it rolls quite quickly, but compared to like a Giles or an MX or something, it's kind of sedate. And so, I throw some rolls and people normally get a feel for it. But because I'm used to flying in competition, I also stop my rolls very aggressively. And
Hmm.
every time I'll do like 3 or 4 rolls to show people what's up. And then as I'm stopping on a dime, I remember that I should probably tell them. And then I see someone's head just bounce off the glass. And I'm like, yeah, yep, probably should have warned you. But like, as much as I can, like, getting other people to do the flying, I feel like it takes the edge off that sickness because they know what's going to happen, right?
Sure.
It isn't that sudden like, oh God, I'm floating out of my seat, or I'm crushed into it, or I have a headache on the left hand side of my noggin because some dumbass stopped very abruptly.
Sure.
Um, so
Well, and
I'm so
it's also easy with you as the captain to hover over the controls and take them as needed, still allowing them as much, freedom as possible. Because I would imagine the average person you get for the first time trying to teach them an aerobatic maneuver is going to be dainty with it, and you're the one grabbing it and going, "Get in there."
Yeah, I mean, I normally do a little bit of monkey see, monkey do. Like, non-pilots do a lot better than pilots. Pilots are normally like pretty ginger about the whole thing.
I
I
bet.
took Chip Keating for a ride a while ago, who's an incredibly talented local skydiver, and man, I will say, like, he has a knack for it because I was like, hey, like, we're sort of leaving the box. Can you turn us around? He just slams the thing on its side and then pulls fucking hard, and I was like, hell yeah, brother, let's fucking go. But yeah, most pilots do not have the bravery to do that, which is silly because it's like that's your chance, right? Like, you probably shouldn't do shit like that in a 172.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is your opportunity. Especially like if you don't care too much about precision, if you turn slightly past knife edge, so you're actually descending a little bit, like, you're going to be gaining energy, so you can just do the whole turn at like 8G. There's like no reason not to,
Right.
which is just stupid shit you don't really get an opportunity to do in like more common airplanes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at least you damn well shouldn't.
Yeah.
So, you've mentioned a couple of times when we talk pre-podcast, obviously you've got a real job, like out in the real world. You said you do cybersecurity, which means you like went to school and all this, which means that at some point your family thought you were that sedate kid. At what point
uh
how did they react when they realized, oh, fuck?
Well, so I didn't go to school, which, I mean, in fairness, might actually have been the first. That might have been the first instance of the, like, sort of like, fuck you, I'm going to do this my way thing, because I did well in high school. The like university entrance situation works a little bit different in Australia than it did in the US, but I got pretty good grades. Probably could have got into most programs. I actually debated joining the Air Force so that I could be a pilot, which knowing what I'm like now, I don't know if I would have thrived in that environment.
Sure.
But then, I wound up going down the self-taught route and kind of having a misspent youth that turned into a career doing sort of like computer hackery kind of things. And so that was sort of like the first, I guess, big risk I took. My parents and I are not super close, but they've been pretty good about this whole thing. Although I think some of it also comes from, I think, not always understanding. Like I do my best to kind of catch up a couple times a year and be like, hey, this is what I've been up to. And it's normally, I know I like to do the sort of downplay thing just because I fancy myself as a comedian. So, like 2022, it was like, like had a good year, kind of did some stuff. I'm also the Australian canopy piloting champion, like, just like drop that stuff in there. But sure, when I do get a new hobby, I'm like, oh, I'm base jumping now. Oh, like I got my pilot's license. I'm into aerobatics. I'm driving a rally car now. By and large, I feel like they do a good job of being supportive. I also think at this point they realize that it's probably futile to try and argue the counter case.
Yeah.
But like I think it helps a lot that I do have sort of this pedigree of like, yeah, I mean, I literally do this for a living, right? Like
Sure.
A lot of what I do is help clients figure out whether or not, like, the whole point of my job isn't like don't do risky things, right? Because as a business that's not viable. Like you just have to take risk, right? It's
Sure.
about trying to figure out what risks are going to be good, are defensible, have
Sure.
a reasonable chance of going well, and whether or not you've done your best to kind of cross your T's, dot your I's against it going tits up, which is, very similar to all of these other things, right? Like base jumping is stupid, right? Like it's a dumb activity that only dumb people get involved in. And you can't really argue against that. But there's also like a good and a bad way to pursue being a base jumper, right?
Sure.
Like if you just huck it and hope for the best all the time, like you will probably be a pretty short career.
Yeah.
But if you stack the deck in your favor and you're pretty disciplined with weather, and particularly like I've never done a wingsuit base jump, I think I would like to, but I just know I'm unwilling to put in the work right now to like get
Sure.
good enough at wingsuiting to make that make sense. But if you do all that stuff, like I think you can make it reasonably safe. Like I think you can turn it into like an acceptable risk.
Sure.
And I like that crossover, right?
Sure.
Like I think in general I can defend most of the things I'm doing as like an acceptable risk, if that makes sense.
It's funny. I can't help but see the parallels of, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but it's the Ben Stiller movie where he plays a risk assessment guy, and it's actually an Aussie billionaire that goes out and does all this stupid shit, and he's supposed to assess whether or not this billionaire can get insurance because of all the crazy shit that he does.
Oh, I haven't seen it, but I might look it up. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's actually, it's What About Polly? That's the name.
Oh, I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, watch it because it's kind of funny because, of course, throughout the course of it, Ben Stiller goes from being this completely risk-averse person to doing some kind of stupid shit. But it's just kind of funny that your job is to keep people from making risky decisions when, if they were to dig into your personal life, most normal people would think your entire life is insane.
Yeah, I mean, that does come up. It's actually a really funny story. So I started rally driving last year, and after my first rally, I got to hang out with a bunch of the people from Dirtfish at the house, and we're hanging out, and they were flipping through my Instagram basically, and we're like, "You're out of your fucking mind," right? Like they were looking at like skydiving, base jumping, flying, like all these things that I'm doing, and they're like, "This is nuts," and I'm looking at rally driving, and I'm like, "You're
nuts.
kidding, right?" Like, this is fucking insane. You're doing 100 miles an hour through the woods. Like there's nothing stopping you from hitting a tree at, like 90 miles an hour. Like this is crazy. And I think sort of two things emerged from it. One was like, it's a very different, base jumping. Like you just have to be firing for like 3 minutes. Right. And like, as long as you don't fuck up in those 3 minutes, you're golden. Right. So it's a very different thing to like 2.5 hours of driving flat out in the woods, and one mistake anywhere in there is potentially catastrophic, right? Yeah. So it's different. The other thing that I thought was great, so Brandon Semenuk, the like probably presumptive US champion this year, competes in Red Bull Rampage, the like downhill mountain bike race in the desert.
Right.
And at least we could all agree that like that's fucking stupid, right? Like even though they were looking at my hobbies and I was looking at their hobbies, and we were both like, you're out of your mind, all of us could come together and be like, Brandon is unhinged. The sends that he's making out there are just bonkers.
Yeah.
And so like it is. Oh, sorry.
No. It's funny because obviously it all is just different levels, right? I mean, I kind of gauge everything that I see Pastrana doing is a fucking bridge too far for me, and that's all the shit that you're doing.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, like, so we're now, I mean, not really competing against him because he's very fast and in a factory car, and I'm in limited two-wheel drive and not that fast just yet.
sure.
But yeah, my name is on the same entry list as Travis, which is
Isn't that shit
weird.
wild?
Yeah, it's super cool. I actually, so earlier this year, Brandon and Travis, who drive for the Subaru factory team, both destroyed their cars on the same rock at Oregon Trail Rally, which was bitterly ironic. I think like though this is kind of shitty, I do sort of be like, well, if someone had to total their car, like it's kind of good that it was the Subaru team. You know, they
Right,
can pay for it, whereas a privateer would be hosed.
right.
But because of that, like I technically beat Travis and Brandon in a rally. Like if you look at the final results, like I think we finished like 8th or 9th in the overall, and they were like 12th and 14th.
Yeah,
Um,
and
which is bananas. Like
but you have to love it, right? I mean, I had a not in anything like rally, but in doing a triathlon. It was the Beauty and the Beast triathlon in St. Croix that Armstrong was a part of, and of course. I was way back in the field, but when he got that disqualification, I get to say I beat fucking Armstrong in a fucking triathlon because I
totally.
did.
And that's the thing is like it was like especially at the time I was like well the rock and yada yada and this happened that happened and actually one of my friends Jack from the school like and I think it was Jack set me to rights and he was like yeah well but like you didn't hit the rock right like if
Yeah,
you also hit it then like yeah they would have beaten you but since you didn't that's just how it is um
absolutely. You
and
you finished the race.
exactly. Yeah, and I mean that is such a fun part of being in these sports is that you do actually get to compare yourself to like big names.
Well, and I would imagine maybe not quite as much with rally because as soon as you get with the big teams, you're talking about big money. But especially in something like skydiving, you find yourself shoulder to shoulder and becoming friends with the people who you covet and want to be because they're doing these amazing things. And next thing you know, you're on the load and fucking Omar Al is giving you tips on shit to do, and you're like, all right, this is just cool.
Yeah, I mean I know coming up in swooping, I hit swooping very hard. Like from basically from as soon as I started skydiving, I saw people on the pond and I was like, I want to do that. That's gonna be me. And I had a little bit of common sense and I knew no one wants to fucking hear it from a fresh AFF grad. So I
All right.
mostly kept my mouth shut, but I knew that was what I wanted to do. And so, I got from, like fresh AFF grad to like competing in a couple of years. And I got from that to like open class in another couple of years. And then from there to like a national championship before too much longer. But I remember that like coming from competing in the beginner class in the FLCPA, I put up 6 zeros in my first competition, perfect score.
Yeah.
Which was a very, very humble beginning. To like being at nationals and like they typically do the last round in reverse standing order, which is both like fair and I think more dramatic for people watching.
Sure.
And all of a sudden I was like on the last load of the competition, like against multiple time world champions. I won speed a couple times at US Nationals, unfortunately as a guest. So I just have some fun photos on the podium and a
Right.
pretty sweet plastic medal that Midwest gave me. But I mean, it was pretty fun to like beat world champions in speed.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
And like, I'm sorry.
Well, and even to be in a sport where that's an option, right? For a basic unknown newbie to all of a sudden find themselves like vying for the podium.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I do really I really love about skydiving. Like if you're into belly, like hanging out with airspeed or rhythm is like totally a thing that you can do. Like if you're into VFS, like core runs camps all the time, right? Like I hang out with a bunch of people who either are on or have been on core. Like on the one hand, I think I've made the joke so many times that if you want to be a world champion or represent your country or sort of have competed at the highest level, the best thing you can do is get into a niche sport, right? Like it turns out, like it's a numbers game. I played underwater hockey very competitively when I was a kid, and I like won a national championship. And it turns out you're not you're not fighting with a million people for that slot.
No.
Like if you want to go to the Olympics for archery, you're gonna have to beat a lot of people. If you want to go to nationals for underwater hockey, can probably just
Yeah.
show up, right? Like,
Well, I mean, and that's skydiving in a nutshell, right? Especially for full-time skydivers, because you might be, you know, at the top of your game and competing at a world-class level, but I mean, fuck, I was getting tips on how to do a 450 from Cornelia Mihai right before she would go shoot a tandem video. You know, I mean,
yeah.
it's skydiving.
And like I think that's actually why I really like skydiving, because I feel like it really it like skirts that line really well. So a debate that my girlfriend and I have a lot is sort of how feasible is it for anyone to get on a either national or world championship winning team, right? Like how realistic is it for anyone who's driven enough and well funded enough, let's be real, to sort of get onto airspeed or rhythm or or core or whatever. And I don't know that I have a really good answer. Like I do think that skydiving is a small enough sport that you're not sort of it's not like winning a marathon at the Olympics. Genetically, a lot of people just aren't capable, right?
Yeah.
Like there is, I mean, if ignoring the fact that my knee sucks, there is no amount of training that I could do that would make me an Olympic gold medalist marathon runner. Like my
Sure.
body physically just cannot do it.
Yeah.
Right. And like skydiving is for sure small enough that it is realistic for you to be like, hey, I want to like podium and open. Probably anyone can do that, right? Like with enough money and time and commitment, but you can get onto an open class podium. Whether or not everyone can get onto an open win, I don't know. I really don't have a sense for that. And I think
Sure.
like there's also a different argument about like belly and vertical, right? Like I think there's a pro and con to both of those cases. And I think that's actually really interesting. Like I think that like I'm not sure is actually really motivating to me.
Sure.
Right. Like I think like you can definitely do it because it's such a niche sport. All you have to do is show up. Is still like if you're passionate about that sport, like don't let that stop you. That's awesome. But like that's kind of how underwater hockey was. And I think if it's like marathon running or like Ironmans or whatever, where it's like, my dude, like your body produces too much lactic acid. I'm sorry.
Yep.
You just like you're fucked. Is discouraging if you do have that mindset of like I think it's a really common mindset to be like, if I can't win, I'm not interested.
Sure.
Which sort of is me, honestly. Like something that my girlfriend criticizes me for all the time is she's like, she hates it that it appears as though things come naturally to me. And I think there is some of that. Like I pick things up reasonably quickly. But the thing she doesn't see, I think, is how quickly I quit things that I find hard. Right? Like I think the thing that is lost is that like a lot of times I'll try stuff and if it doesn't come easily to me, I lose interest in it because I'm not
Sure.
interested in being mediocre at stuff. Like I
Sure.
tried to learn the drums after I had knee surgery. Fuck man, I'm bad. I am so bad. Like I have a electronic drum machine and you can record yourself playing and it'll play it back to you.
Right.
And I'll be playing along to a song I like and what I'm hearing will sound all right. I'm like, I'm doing okay. Not like not going to set the world on fire, but I could do this. And then I play it back. And I'm like, fuck, dude, it's Jesus. It's drunk cats screwing on a drum kit. Like it's so
Yep.
bad.
Yep.
And that really interferes with my motivation to pick up the drum. So I think, I think that gray area of like, ooh, maybe it is awesome for skydiving. I think it's a really unique part of the sport that I love.
Well, it gives you that sense of possibility. Like
Exactly.
plus skydiving also, I mean, for someone that has the dreams of competition and making it to the top, the end game and the end result of being a world championship skydiver is you have a medal and probably a decent amount of debt.
Yeah, decent amount of debt. I mean, the best case really is that you can break even. I know
Yes.
of one team that has been paid to jump. And I mean, in fairness, like the trick is coaching, right? Like that's
Sure.
actually how you make the money. Like Kurt and Jeannie, I'm sure do quite well for themselves. Like, and like, that's not a diss. They run an excellent school. There's a reason that they're successful. I know that Airspeed actually pays the bills coaching.
Sure. Sure.
But like, yeah, for sure. Like I have won a couple of national championships in a couple of disciplines now. And like, yeah, I have a medal.
Yeah.
And a picture of me on a podium and a bunch of fun memories and some pretty sweet, hugs and high fives. But, it is not the same as being a like hashtag athlete in like a bigger sport where, like basketball players like do great. Love that for them.
Oh yeah.
But, at the same time, like, could I do that if I cared enough and put in the work? No,
Of
too short
course.
and too unfit, right? Like,
Of course.
um,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the daydream that I had throughout my entire career jumping full time was if only athletes were paid commensurate to the amount of risk they face. Because then we'd all be fucking living like Kobe Bryant.
yeah, and I mean, I actually like this is I got onto this rant last time I was on podcast as well. Like, I think skydiving has a really unhealthy relationship with sponsorship, honestly. Like, and I'm not looking to point a finger because I don't think it's anyone's fault, and I don't think people on either side of the fence are, to blame for the way that things are. But like, I think when a lot of people think of sponsorship, like they think of a deal that is much better for the athlete, right? And with a motorsport background, it is reasonably common to pick up a sponsorship deal that will pay you cash, right?
Sure.
And whether or not that's cash that you immediately spend on entry fees and paying your staff and all the stuff that you can't get sponsored in kind for. At the same time, the amount of work people put in to get, like a discount on a rig every year or discount a parachute doesn't feel commensurate. At the same time, a lot of people are coasting super hard and not really making the case for why you should get paid, right?
Sure.
And like, I think fundamentally the strategy you need to take is that you are a marketing employee, right? Like, if you can defend the thesis that by paying me you will make more money and then back it up at the end of the year with like, here's all the money I made you, of course people are going to want to support you. But like, we have sort of fallen, the norm is very much not that. And also, like, I think at this point it's going to be difficult to affect meaningful change, right?
Sure.
And for me, like, I have some, and to be clear, I'm very thankful for the sponsorships that I have. I don't want all of that to sound like I'm ungrateful, because they're great. But like, for me, like, I make decent money working in tech. Like, I can afford to buy rigs.
Sure.
That is not why I'm sponsored. Like, my sponsorships are just because I believe in the gear, and I'm happy to partner with them. But the big reason that I tried to seek out sponsorship and got it is because I wanted to be involved in R&D, right? And for me, the only way I can have access to prototypes and be involved in getting and helping develop the gear into the gear that I want to be jumping was to develop a relationship with the manufacturer, right?
Sure.
And so for me, super worth it. I try to get a decent number of order forms in with my name on them every year, and like, fingers crossed, my sponsors still enjoy working with me. They were very patient this year when I said like, hey, I probably won't be competing as much because I'm doing this rally thing. But I do think that we could push towards a better structure where people actually could make a living directly from jumping instead of
Sure.
choosing to spend the money they make coaching on competing.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that break-even proposition in skydiving isn't just associated with competing; it's the sponsorship stuff as well. Everybody's just looking for it to not cost them anything, right? I mean, which is
Absolutely.
not the greatest way to, not the best business model.
And I mean, I think, it also like, I think the flip side of that is that it's not like everyone is going to get that deal. I actually, when I was racing motorcycles in Australia, there was a woman, I think Stacey McMahon was her name, and like, a bunch of people were really, really shitty toward her because she had quite a lot of sponsorship and she wasn't doing great. Like, she would rarely finish in the top 10. But she had a lot of sponsorship and she had definitely some augmentation, and I think a lot of people latched onto that as like the reason. But the real reason was because she did a great job for her sponsors. She did a good job on social media. She would wheel out the bike to events. Like, if they had an event going on, she would show up in her leathers and stand around with the bike and greet people and be personable.
Sure.
And like, she did an effective job of marketing the businesses that supported her, and in kind, they supported her. And it was great. And I think, also there was some like casual sexism involved. I'm sure that had
Sure.
it been a man who finished, in the back of the pack every time, but was doing a good job of hustling, I think people would have been more understanding of the situation.
Sure.
But I actually think about her a lot when I debate how to tackle things. Like, a conversation we're having right now is like, should I pursue sponsorship for next year for rally stuff, or should I continue as a privateer and
Sure.
work at a job and pay for it that way?
Well, the parallel that I have jumped to mind is Danica Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
Danica Patrick wasn't the greatest driver. She wasn't the worst, but she was fantastic for the brand and she was incredible for marketing. I mean, I know jack shit about car racing, but I know who Danica Patrick is, which is exactly why you would want someone like her representing you, at least to some degree, right? I mean, she was good for that kind of business.
And it's actually interesting. So, Dirtfish, the rally school that I got my start in, has a huge focus on women in motorsport, right? And I think through my involvement with them, I've sort of become more aware of what that looks like. And two women that I'm now aware of because of them. One is Sarah Price, who was the first woman to win a stage at Dakar. She was actually on track to win Dakar, and she had a mechanical this year, which is awesome, right? Like, but I just listened to a podcast with her talking about how she gets funding for the year, and like Dakar is like a $500,000 venture for her. It's an incredible amount of money, right? And like she has to find that money somewhere, and she pursues it through sponsorship. Granted, like Dakar being such a big thing, it's much easier to argue that like exposure and yada yada. It's turns out everyone gives a more of a shit about that than like I went to Dubai to fly parachutes.
Yeah.
But again, like looking at the way she represents her sponsors and makes it work for them is I think really inspirational. Like and especially at that level, I tell a lot of people when they're like, I'm gonna go get sponsors, I'm like, bro, get a job. Like just go work somewhere and then spend the money on skydiving. Like it will be easier and more fun and you will have more money,
Yeah.
But like it just go get a job and make $500,000 plus whatever you need. Like that's not realistic. Like if you could just do, a lot of people would just do that, right?
Yeah, I wish it was that easy.
Yeah, no, it's just go get two jobs, like work at
Yeah.
McDonald's and Burger King. It'll figure
Yeah.
itself out. But like when I hear those stories of how people are making it work, I do think it's awesome. And I think it's really interesting that like I don't know if this is just biased because of the media I consume, but I feel like it's a lot of times women now who are doing a much better job of really defending the thing, and not just because we're a racing family.
Sure.
Like we've always been sponsored by this oil company. We probably always will be, like it's good to know that I can count on this money every year. Like I feel
Sure.
like, her and another woman that I'm across because of the school, Michelle Abate, like who's very public with the way she runs her program and with the way she tracks down her sponsorship. Like I look at these women and I'm super impressed with like the way they're making it work, to go race. The Danica Patrick example is a really good one because like her results were never incredible, like I don't think anyone looked at her and was like, that's a championship contender right there. But she also like went racing, like most of the people who write shitty Facebook posts about her, it's like, have you driven a NASCAR?
Exactly.
Like,
Well,
I bet it's super fun, but like no one's given me the chance just yet.
well, and at the end of the day, how many asses did she put in the seats just to come watch her do a mediocre job on a race? That's at the end of the day, that's the goal of that business side of things. She wanted to go race. They wanted to get people to come out and watch her. So it's a win-win, whether she's getting the checkered flag or not.
100%. And I mean, I think NASCAR is like an interesting one. I know very little about NASCAR. It's just not it's not a discipline of racing that really does a whole lot for me. But it is interesting because of how many people show up for carnage, right?
Yeah.
Like most forms of racing, like F1 you show up to see hopefully a battle, and as of very recently that's actually happening again, but for a while it was just the max show. But like there are very few forms of racing that people show up specifically hoping that someone will have a really big one. But it does mean that it means that if you're running mid-pack, but like often dramatically, you can sort of use that as a marketing pull. The flip side being that like you need to make even more money because you sort of know you're going to go through a few chassis this year.
Oh yeah.
Like
it's funny. I had a friend of mine by the name of Matt Jaskell, who's a Vegas jumper, but he's also a NASCAR driver. And I had him on the show a couple of times actually. But the first time I had him on, we talked about one of his crashes in NASCAR where he ended up on top of another fucking car. And you're like, yeah, man, that's the people don't go to NASCAR to watch the car go around in circles. They go to see it hit the wall.
totally, which I mean I have mixed feelings about. I'm glad that NASCAR is doing a lot of safety stuff now. Like if the crashes are generally not bad for the driver, like at that point I don't care. I was talking to someone recently who does figure eight racing, which is the most American fucking thing I've ever heard. I thought it was jokes. I thought it was going to be like what's the term, kimosabi? Is that the thing in wrestling where it's like the facade?
Yeah.
That the wrestlers aren't there to hurt each other. They're there to put on a show.
Yeah.
I fully thought that was figure eight racing. I thought there was a gentleman's agreement that there's some priority thing, so we're not no. Half of them are trying to get through it, and the other half are closing their eyes and nailing it, and pretty confident the other guy will stop. It is bananas.
Carnage. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But like some people are into it, and I can't directly relate to that.
Right.
But I can see that if you want to see a car accident up close, that is a tremendous event to buy tickets for, right? And like I think, again, like knowing that your car is probably going to be looking pretty rough by the end, I think it almost is easier to budget. Like budgeting for rally is hard because I don't know if I'm going to trash the car, right?
Right.
Like
right.
I know I'll probably break it a little bit. We hit a rock about this, literally about the size of an engine, at the last race we did. We did shockingly little damage. Actually, the Subaru factory team again hit it way harder and tore a corner out of the car. But it's so difficult to budget for because you don't know if you're gonna have a really expensive one. Whereas for that,
right.
you're gonna probably every panel is gonna be destroyed. Probably at least one corner is gonna be smashed up, and like I think there's comfort in that. You just knowing,
Could you imagine if that was what skydiving was like? Oh, thank fuck it's not.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, even skydiving, like I do think when people are complaining about the expense, like I think it's very manageable, right? Like I have a buddy, Nico, who I don't know how he manages to do it so regularly, but he has a toggle fire or some shit, and then does a bad job of taking off his RDS, and he gets two rings off, and then he lands with the RDS trailing off his CD Cascade. Just awful for the lines, right? And so like more than once he's like, "Can you have a look?" And I'm like, "I don't have to. They're fucked, but sure, I'll come have a look."
Yeah.
But it's a $350 line set. It is inconvenient and expensive. Like if you are living paycheck to paycheck, $350 is money you don't want to spend. Totally.
Sure.
I'm not minimizing that. But it is like a known expense.
Sure.
Like if you lose your main, which is possible, if you have a shitty cutaway, you don't always find them. But you like know what's going to happen. Whereas, if you're a privateer in NASCAR, like, are you going to accidentally torch a $500,000 car?
Yeah.
And like they do catch fire sometimes. Like
Oh yeah.
It can go from like, oh man, what a lovely weekend to like, fuck, I guess we need a new car in the last lap of the race. Trying to figure out how to budget those kind of things is just bananas, and it is so new to me.
All the shit that I'm so glad that I didn't have to deal with in skydiving, and that I'd never owned the planes that I was flying. So maintenance might have been a headache, but it wasn't necessarily my headache.
I was going to say, I mean, that's the nice thing about, flying turbine airplanes where, the turbine is the value of the airplane, right? Like the airframe, everything from the firewall back comes with the engine. By and large, you're just buying a PT6 and it comes in a convenient travel case, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that is a nice aspect of being the pilot. When like the chip detector goes off or the prop stops spinning or whatever, you can just be like, fuck, that's going to be an expensive day for someone else.
Oh yeah,
like,
write it up and go home.
It's at the end of the runway. I couldn't taxi it back on account of the engine being broken. So like, let me know when you get a new one. I'll see ya.
Yep. That was always my favorite thing about it. Was knowing that bill wasn't mine to pay.
I remember watching that documentary they made in Sebastian where they taxied one of Rook's autos into another one of Rook's autos.
Yeah.
I mean that I also watched that for the first time when it was such a new jumper, and I'm glad they made that documentary. Honestly, like I think that was great. I think that was just a very preventable accident, and I think making if we can not do that ever again, the sport will be better for it. But also it was like such a fascinating insight into like how this works and like how quickly you can put an airplane back together if you're motivated enough and you have enough auto parts sitting around in a hangar somewhere.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating.
I mean, the whole world of it and everything aviation based for sure is based on being able to get it back in the air with rigs and with aircraft and stuff, and being able to have that turnaround, especially when that aircraft is the lifeline of the business. You have to be able to get these planes back in the air and operating.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not flying, you're not making money. I mean, it's also like it's just fascinating some of the like optimizations that you see. Like if you're renting the airplane, oftentimes you get charged per stop, right? And so it might be more economical to just let the prop spin for 20 minutes while you pack a tandem, which is bizarre. Wow. I like my biggest pet peeve, maybe not my biggest, but I think the one I run into the most often is people like not moving quickly when the prop is spinning.
Oh,
Like,
that's my
and
number one.
as a pilot, like I'm not, I don't work at the drop zone, but I am sponsored by one. And like when I see people like putting on their booties while the airplane's sitting there, I'm like, no, dude, like you had your chance. Like it's going to be difficult to do this on the airplane, but that's where you're going to do it. Get on the fucking airplane.
Yep.
And it's bizarre for me, especially like when I travel a lot of time. Oh,
There we go.
there we go.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
I mean, I think I just pissed and moaned about people and my willingness to yell at people even when it's their drop zone and their team. I'm still like, I don't care. Get on the airplane.
Oh, hey, trust me, the efficiency thing was beaten into me very, very early on in the sport, and because a jump pilot's lifeblood is being as efficient as humanly possible, knowing that I can get back on the ground and some dickweed that wants to jerk around can absolutely ruin my numbers, just would send me through the roof.
I mean, one thing I wish drop zones would just like put posters up, right? Like I think a lot of people don't realize how expensive idling a turbine is. Like the numbers, I'm not a turbine pilot, but like the numbers I've always heard thrown around is like 400 pounds an hour flat out. It's not like your car that at idle burns a rounding error of fuel to like
Sure.
turn over at idle. Like just
Sure.
keeping that prop spinning burns a quarter as much fuel as climbing.
For sure.
Right. And like I think a lot of people, if they maybe they would be a little more polite. Some people just don't fucking care, and I don't know. There's nothing I can do about that. But like,
I had good luck with explaining to jumpers like this. I would tell them, if you leave me sitting and idling on the ground too long, it's just that much less availability I have to get that next turn. And now I may have to shut down, and who knows what happens during that shutdown. Does weather come in? Is there something else that fucks it up? So you don't want me to fuel before I have to fuel.
That's a really good carrot. I use a similar thing when I'm coaching canopy stuff. I think like trying to convince people that it's important to learn to land accurately can be a struggle, right? Like a lot of people, in the same way that their parachute is just a way to get down after every skydive and not something that they feel compelled to be excellent at.
Sure.
In as far as they typically land on the drop zone, they're like, I did it. That's accurate enough. And I think swoopers, it's easier because swooping is fucking difficult if you can't fly a pattern, right? And so it's a very easy case for me to make that like you need to learn to fly a good pattern because otherwise you're never ever going to be good at swooping, and people want to impress the tandem students, so like job done. But when I'm working with people who don't necessarily aspire to be swoopers, like I'm just like, hey, did you know if you land closer to the hangar you can do more skydives? Like
Exactly.
the people that skydive more than you do that because they land close and then they manifest the last 3 slots on the load you want to get on while you're going on a cross-country hike from the different zip code that you landed in.
Yep.
Right. And like, even though I think it should be enough to just be like, hey, you like this drop zone. If you can save the drop zone like a couple bucks on every load you're on, you should just do that because it's a kind thing to do.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, yeah, like you'll probably get to jump more if we can fuel every 3 loads instead of every 2 because you're not dicking around. You will just get to do more skydives, and also there's a chance jump tickets won't go up quite as quickly. That does do a lot to sway the hearts and minds, right?
Lots of benefits. Yeah, because I've discovered over my 29 years in the sport that yelling doesn't always work.
It doesn't, and like sometimes I think you have to, and I don't like doing it, especially because a lot of times people do check out, right? The second you get aggro, they're not hearing the words anymore, they're just hearing you being mad at them. The flip side, when I see someone like just barely not die and not even be aware of it, I'm like, hey, did you see that other guy that you like banged end cells with turning final? What other guy? I'm like, fucking serious. And like, it is difficult to keep calm at times, particularly when they really should know better. When someone has 40 skydives, no matter how bad it is, I typically take a series of deep breaths and then wander over and be like, hey man, talk me through your skydive, and we together paint a picture for what happened and what should have happened, kind of thing. But when I see someone with 2,000 jumps nearly bash into someone or like cross the line, our drop zone has like the swoop lane and the 90s and left side, but they converge, and in general we just tell everyone to keep a healthy respect for that line, because if you get absolutely no better, just like fucks off into the other side for no reason, there is a part of me that's like, look, man, you used up all of the like not getting yelled at for your stupid choices when you knocked
Oh, yeah.
over 2,000 jumps.
Oh yeah, which honestly, that's probably one of my favorite parts about skydiving as a whole is that I can yell at you because you were a fucking absolute idiot during the day, but I'll be the first one standing next to you with a beer at the bonfire at the end of the night, talking shit and having fun. Like, get it done, get it out there, learn your fucking lesson. Now let's move on and go have some fun.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think the thing that sometimes is lost and is also really helpful to reiterate if you are that person is like delivering some feedback is to be clear that you're like, I'm doing this because I want you to be safe.
Yeah.
Right. Like we currently have a rash of newer skydivers at our drop zone that I think don't have a sense of consequence because we've done a good job of safety at the drop zone. Like it's such a bizarre situation to be in. And I don't want to be all doom and gloom. And like I've seen people get loaded into ambulances. I've seen people not get loaded into ambulances, right?
Yep.
Like it turns out the process can change.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that person who's like, you know, this sport can be scary and shitty and take everything you love from you. But at the same time, I'm like, you don't understand how good you have it, right? Like the fact that you haven't been confronted by someone having a shithouse day and making your day be shithouse is great, and you should strive to keep that streak alive.
Yeah, like you want this to be the norm, not the exception.
Exactly. And it is difficult because I struggle a lot, both in like a coaching environment, like, you know, when people are coming to me for advice, especially coaching canopy stuff where the rule one is don't fucking die, right? Like everything after that is like, can't do more skydives if you do your last skydive. But especially when it's less solicited advice, or my personal favorite, when someone's like, hey, can you help me with this? And I'm like, yeah, but actually, like, I've been seeing what you're doing, and like, it's the other thing you're doing is really unsafe. And they're like, well, I don't want to talk about that. And I'm like, well, you asked me for advice, so now we are. Right. Like, it is so challenging to thread the needle between being all like doom and gloom, and this can really sneak up on you, and also like, this is super fun. You should stick at it. I want you to be successful. I just don't want you to get yourself in a pickle.
Sure. No, I completely agree. I also agree that we can keep this up for fucking hours. I have a feeling neither of us are going to shut up. So I'm going to ask you how people find out how to come do coaching with you, how they can find out about your rally driving and all this stuff. And I will also put a pin in, we absolutely need to do a second episode, because at the end of this, we didn't talk that much about skydiving. And I want to get back I want to get back to your skydiving career, so there's gonna need to be a round two.
Pilots, right? This is what always happens.
Fucking hell,
my girlfriend will literally walk up and just be like, "Hey, doing pilot stuff. I'll see ya." So yeah, my Instagram is Richö_Butts. I'm doing my best to be a little more active on that than I have been historically. I also am sort of trying to get a YouTube channel going, so I'll send you the link if you want to pin that somewhere. But Instagram is where I post the bulk of it. And if you want to get on coaching with me, just reach out to me. DMs are easiest. I mostly coach at Tracy, but I do occasionally travel.
Awesome. And Tracy is your home drop zone now.
Yeah, Skydive California, and Tracy is my home drop zone. Come find me. I love to jump. At this point, I'm trying to be that guy who can sort of do everything. So I'll get on basically any kind of rip.
Awesome, Matt. It's so fantastic we were able to get this nailed down. Like I said, I have a feeling we could keep this up for days. So I will thank you very much. We'll get another one scheduled and tell you to have a great California day.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me. This was great. And I'll see you around.
All right, brother.
Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the Extreme Sports Collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available, hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Damn.